Hi, I'm Charlie O'Donnell, and I'm the founder and one of 1,500 participants in nextNY, which is a community-driven organization of up-and-coming tech and digital media professionals in New York City.
Hi, and welcome to Next New Yorkers. I'm your guest host, Paul Cantonis. Today we'll be joined by Charlie O'Donnell, founder of Next New York. Hey Charlie, welcome to Next New Yorkers.
How you doing? Thanks for having me here.
Thank you. I'd like to ask you, Charlie, how did Next New York come about?
So Next New York came about when I started thinking about what my next position might be. I'd met a lot of great people who worked at digital media firms, entrepreneurs, but the thing about the New York tech community is that it often gets dwarfed by a lot of the other larger industries. So I was looking for a way to meet other people who were sort of around my stage in my career, people who worked at big media firms or entrepreneurs, to just try and kind of meet and share ideas about what people were up to get a sense of where I should go in my own career.
Take me back to the first Next New York meeting. How many people came and who were they?
A couple of us got together, some entrepreneurs, and we thought maybe, if 10, 15, maybe 20 people got together at a bar maybe once a month or something like that, that might be great. And then the emails started coming in of, can I invite a friend, or I know somebody else would be interested. We had our first event in February of 2006. It was at Antarctica, which is a bar down on Hudson Street,
Right.
and 75 people showed up. And it was a really great mix of entrepreneurs, people from big companies, people from companies that I didn't even realize were in New York.
What do you think was some of the highlights of what came out of that first meeting? Like, where did it go from there?
I think the thing that really made nextNY take off was the fact that I sort of backed away from it in a sense from a leadership role, because I knew that I didn't really have the time to be a manager or run the group, and so I sort of pushed the management to the individuals in the community, and I said, hey, well, this is your group, you do with it what you want.
At what point in somebody's career here in the city, or in dealing with technology here in the city, New York City, do you think that it's the right time for them to come to Next New York and become a member?
Oh, I think anybody can benefit from it. There's probably about 1,500 members, and I would say the majority of them are probably, maybe about between 5 and 10 years experience, some less. We have a couple of students. Some of them have a lot more experience, but it tends to gather around that range. And in a way, some people have sort of described it as the next generation of New York area entrepreneurs.
How would you say the nextNYork.org website has become a great resource for the city or for the tech community? Being a wiki, are people really putting a lot of good information into it?
So I think the best resource about nextNY is just the people. I mean, we've tried to experiment with a number of different things to put on the website. We have a resources list, and we've been trying to organize the events. A couple of us created a calendar called nyctechevents.com, where we're trying to get everybody to sort of gather a lot of information about what's going on in the city. But really, it's the people who show up to all these events, whether it's something informal like a social gathering, or whether it's a talk on how to raise angel financing, or sort of the next generation of business development, or an open house at a big company. I think the real benefit in the content, even though our website is a wiki, is in the conversations that happen on the site and the way that people reach out to each other at some of these events. You
mentioned financing as being one of the things that is always discussed on Next New York. What would you say are the top 3 concerns for new companies starting up here in New York?
One of the main concerns is hiring and making sure that they get good people to join their companies. When you are a 1 or 2 person startup and the next person you hire increases your workforce by 50%, obviously making sure it's the right personality fit, it's the right skill set is going to be very important. Joining a startup hasn't always necessarily been primarily a career goal for people, but I think there are a lot of great people in New York. I think there are a lot of great companies, and I think it's just a matter of getting the word out there that New York is a great startup and innovation center, that there are lots of opportunities to work at startups, and that frankly, it's not as risky as people think.
Would you say starting up a tech company here in New York is an advantage or a disadvantage, and why?
Well, one, it really depends on where your team is and where the right skill sets are for you to build whatever it is you're building. But I think it's over time becoming less and less important where your technology is developed, or rather the technology isn't necessarily the advantage for a lot of these companies, it's how you use it. And if it's all about creating an advantage by using technology, it really is more important how you relate to your clients, making sure you're close to the people who are going to be paying you. And in New York, there's certainly a ton of clients, whether you're selling to a business, whether you're running some kind of advertising network. There's a little bit of every industry here, and it's at scale.
If you were to profile quickly the members of Next New York and what companies they come from, how would you say would break out with regards to startup companies, mid-level companies, and very large companies?
The active portion of the group, people who tend to attend the most events, who are more active on the listserv, those tend to be startups. They're people who are looking for resources, looking for advice, who need to hire, who need financing, and so they're more willing to sort of step out and put themselves out there to take advantage of the resources that the group has to provide. I think there's a very large proportion of people from larger companies maybe thinking about working at startups, or who are just interested in what the cutting edge startups are doing. On a regular basis, I wind up meeting people who work at larger companies, and they tell me that they've been lurking on the list, they've been paying attention, but haven't necessarily added anything to the conversation. And we're trying to work to bring those people more into the participating group.
Having been a part of New York's tech community for a while now, and seeing where the state of the industry is here in New York City, and now looking forward, what do you see happening in the next couple of years that will really affect technology companies here in New York City?
I think what's really great is that we're starting to see, and we've been seeing for a while, veterans of New York City startups come back for their second or third trip through a startup. And we've had a number of successes in the last couple of years, whether it's Dakota or Massive or Right Media. Just in the last year alone, I think a lot of people from those organizations who are early on are going to think about, well, what's the next thing that I want to do? Maybe think about starting companies. So each company will probably have more experience behind it over time. And so I think there's going to be a lot of new opportunities and opportunities to get really experienced people over the next couple of years, which is historically the advantage that the Bay Area has had, because a lot of the people who are starting companies there are on their 5th, 6th, or 7th startups, and I think they have a little bit of a head start, but we'll be catching up quite soon.
Thanks for your time today, Charlie. Here's what we learned about Next New York. Thank you for watching Next New Yorkers. I'm your guest host, Paul Cantones. See you next time.